Oh man, this server. Oh, the Mosin guy gets me. Oh, good shot.
Yeah, they're all coming down that way. They're all about to come down.
I mean, the proof is in the pudding, and you can see me bringing down people. Doesn't matter what level of gear they're wearing quite quickly with the AKM, especially using only 7.62 BP, considering there's some new rounds like the new MAI and so on and so forth. These guns for me strike a great balance between recoil and also just the general feel of the gun. Feels great to kill people with, and is definitely one of the most common guns that I use, especially when I'm running big kits. If you guys want to see a little bit more of the action with the AKs, you can swing by the Twitch. Link for that will be featured down in the description below if you want to catch me running this gun live, because I actually really do love this gun and I run it quite often. To answer the question I know you didn't ask, what's the difference between AK-103 and the AK-MN? If we look at the two side by side, we'll notice that the AK-MN has a little bit lower recoil. However, it loses out quite heavily in terms of ergonomics, and for me personally, I'm a huge ergo fan, exactly why I am in love with the AK-103. When it comes down to buying the two guns as well, you can actually cop the AK-103 from level 3 Prapor, and sometimes a little bit cheaper on the flea market. If you are a trendy shopper, keep your eyes peeled out, because sometimes you can get one that has all the attachments coming from Reshala, which is a pretty decent deal, especially if you just throw a grip on, a compensator, and you're done. Now, this first build that we can jump directly into, starting off with the JMAC compensator, which recently got a buff. Now, this build here is a personal favorite of mine when the bank account ain't looking too healthy. Now, for handguards, we're going to be starting off with the B10M handguard. You might recognize this from the Scav Boss AK-103s. Now, this is a great handguard because it comes with a rail at the bottom and also some stuff for some tactical attachments. Getting rid of the rear iron sight, we're going to go for the Zenit B33 dust cover, which actually reduces your recoil weirdly enough and looks pretty awesome together. You can keep the iron sight if you want with this option, however, I just remove it for the weight. Jumping directly into a grip, we have a choice between a few, like the TD Aluminium Skeletonized Vertical Grip, which is a great grip, but I'm going to have to settle for the Magpul AFG grip because it's just the tiniest bit cheaper and has good all-round stats. For the stock, it's as simple as quickly throwing on a rubber butt pad or the recoil pad from Prapor here to get that recoil down a tiny bit, and then once again settling for a scope. Now, you can use something like the EKP-8, which also with the shade increases your ergo weirdly enough and is incredibly cheap. This entire gun costs you around 105,000 rubles, including the attachments, and I will attach a build screenshots down below where you can get one a little bit cheaper, but I would recommend this one as the minimum build. I just wanted to point out that I do have 20 recoil skill, which is about 8% reduction, as well as 3% recoil for assault rifles. We're also going to be firing a round here called BP, which has a 5 recoil modifier. So this is with all of these things together. Now, this is a budget build, and this is honestly a great gun. And you can definitely see that if you tap it, it is more than sufficient enough to be accurate at range. As well as the fact that when it goes full auto, I am not trying to control the recoil at all. Generally, I would pull down the tiniest bit here as well. But the fact is, guys, for 100,000 rubles, this gun will absolutely slay anything and everything in your path. If we look at the meta build, however, and compare it side by side, I know this is a lot more expensive, but the grouping is just so badass on the meta AK. So let's talk about this a little bit. Now, the attachments changed a little bit here, but the compensator remains the same. Sticking with the JMAC, but going towards the gas tube, you have a choice between the VS24 or the Troy Combo. Now, the VS24 actually has better ergo and can be cheaper as the rail is also a lot cheaper on the flea market. So if you don't have max traders, you can get the VS combo a little bit cheaper on the flea. That's obviously up to you. We're going to be sticking with the Zenit RK2 because it lowers that recoil just a little bit more, and going for the Aeronox Scorpius pistol grip as it has the best ergo and weight. Removing the rear iron sight, we're jumping straight into the Bastion dust cover, which now actually reduces your recoil weirdly enough. With this option, you can obviously go ahead and throw a butt pad onto the stock, and you got a choice of whatever scope your heart desires. Now, this gun here already is absolutely badass with 61 vertical recoil for 135,000 rubles, including the gun. I mean, this shit is absolutely nuts, and I would definitely recommend using this build. You can take it a little bit further as well. The attachments are still the same. JMac once again, because it got buffed, but this time with the Troy gas block combo, which actually has the most amount of recoil reduction. Now, we're going to be keeping it all pretty much the same, getting rid of that rear iron sight and then slapping the Academia Bastion. Also be throwing on the Zenit charging handle, which is pretty decent, and then immediately for like a hollow sight, which I prefer, and then changing the pistol grip here to the Aeronox Scorpius pistol grip. For the stock, we're going to be actually removing the current stock and then changing up to the PT74M lock, and then directly into the Zenit PT3 Classica stock. Now, this gun is nuts. At 57 vertical recoil and 139 horizontal, this gun is an absolute monster, as well as the fact that it's reasonably priced for a meta gun at 166,000 rubles if you have all of your traders maxed, which is pretty damn decent, including the gun, which is pretty nuts. So enough talking about the 103. This next gun here, the AK-104, is what I believe to be one of the most slept on AKs in any of the 7.62 platform. This gun is actually really cheap on the flea market for around 25,000 rubles, and as you can see, that recoil is damn manageable. Now, the 104 can actually be purchased from traders for 53,000 rubles at level 3 prap, but it is actually incredibly cheaper on the flea market because a lot of people seem to not really appreciate this gun, sometimes around 30,000 rubles average. Now, the 104 is actually really short and compact, so the modding has to be a little bit different. Sticking with the JMac compensator, and we will be jumping directly into the B34 grip. Not only does this handguard look badass, but the fact is it also reduces that recoil. Now, for this build, we are going to be going with the B33 dust cover, as it actually reduces your recoil more than the Academia Bastion, as well as the fact that the pistol grip will remain the same. You can obviously throw a butt pad on the stock. It's not really necessary, as the recoil is already looking really generous. And if you put a Zenit RK2 on there, we're at 66 vertical recoil already. And I mean, this thing is pretty nuts. In fact, this isn't even the meta build, but the gun, just like this, is perfectly usable. And you can also notice that the ergo at 67 is pretty nuts. Now, if money isn't an object to you, you can obviously upgrade that stock, but you don't have to. It's not really necessary. But if you do upgrade the stock to the PT3, you can get a whopping 71 ergo with 64 vertical recoil, which is just absolutely nuts and is one of my favorite all-time AKs in this entire platform. The gun plus the mods is going to set you back 145,000, so not only does it look sexier, is it really underrated with higher ergo, but it's also cheaper than the meta build for the AK-103 and is a personal favorite of mine and honestly my favorite AK in this platform. Hey guys, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed this gun build guide or want to see a specific gun next, let me know in the comments down below what that gun is. I appreciate you guys sticking to the very end, and as always, we'll see you on the next one.
Certainly looking for something which was earthy, which was raw.